Cyan wool is one of those blocks that feels kind of forgettable, to be honest. It was added just 2 years after the game's first launch with the release of Beta 1.2, which introduced all 16 of the classic dye colours we know today. This added a layer of vibrancy to the game that had been sorely missing, but today it just feels a little bit hollow since we've got blocks like concrete that are way more vibrant than these wool blocks. Welcome back to day 8 of my 30-day 30 build challenge. If you've made it this far, and genuinely, once again, thank you. Even just watching these videos in the background means more to me than you might think. The shorts are doing amazing and I really appreciate all the support you guys are giving. It's always been a dream of mine to share my builds in an online space and build up a community, and now, coming off the back of day 7's much larger and challenging build, I was feeling a little worn down, so it keeps me moving and keeps me progressing. Today though, I decided to play it safe when designing a build around the block Cyan wool, as I wanted to have a little bit of a relax and a little bit of a break from the organic structure that we'd done the day prior, and I also wanted to try out staging for the first time because terraforming is something that I really enjoy doing, and I would like to start doing that more in these sort of videos. I went into this build playing it very safe. I knew I wanted a cliffside build, something a little bit hidden and tucked away, so I started with the bottom section. I used a lot of light colours that blended in with the stone, but also stood out in its own way to heighten the vibrancy of the wool. And then I moved on to the upper section where I wanted this build to be a little bit more prominent. I wanted the entrance to be tucked away, but I didn't want the entire build to be tucked away. I still wanted it to be a little bit of a statement piece up on a cliff in maybe like a forest setting. Now, when building this, I was really burnt out. I'm struggling to develop the creativity that I need to produce these builds to the highest standard I possibly can. And especially coming off the back of the Shroomlight build the day before, this build was challenging. It was quite literally in the shadow of something that I thought was extremely impressive, and it felt like nothing that I was doing was making an impact or even being remotely as creative as I had felt the day prior. So this was definitely a build that had a lot of labor involved. I needed to just keep pushing and work through all the ugly phases of it, even though I wanted to tear it down and start again, just because the tenacity required was something that I really wanted to develop, and I think is a skill that is very beneficial to a lot of builders in this space. When I was planning the layout, I wanted to add these diagonal elements because I haven't really been doing that a lot in the builds thus far, but I feel like I could have pushed them a little bit more creatively than what I ended up doing. I played it a little too safe in these areas, and I didn't let the diagonal sections really speak for the skill that I have doing diagonals. So definitely in future builds, that is something that I want to work on, maybe when I'm less creatively strained and maybe when I can experiment a little bit more. Who knows, maybe one of these builds could be built completely on a diagonal. Wouldn't that be a challenge? Now I have to be completely truthful with you guys. After this build, I completely stopped. I was doing it daily up until this point, and after the Shroomlight build, I really got so deep in my head that imposter syndrome really started to fight with me. It's always been something that's been in the back corner of my mind the entire time building this stuff, and it definitely reared its ugly head the most with this build. It was not only in the shadow of something that I really loved, but I was also doing it daily up until this point, which is something that I'm realizing isn't quite to my dynamic. So even though it says in the title 30 days, 30 builds, it spanned more across the duration of maybe half a year. Now we're getting more into it now that as of releasing these videos, I'm doing voiceovers daily and I'm trying to build as much as I can daily. but it's a more relaxed environment now. It's something that I really needed to work on, and I pushed myself a little too hard in the beginning, so now we're easing back into it. But with all that out of the way, I went into texturing the roof. I just added a subtle gradient to it. The gradient blocks that I chose though aren't probably the best and didn't provide the smoothest gradient, which is definitely something that I would change or try and enhance in the future. But just adding in basic texturing to all the walls, as I said, I wasn't really feeling it for this build. I played it a little too safe, which really hampered my creativity and what I was able to do. So it's really just a basic build that I'd probably have in a survival let's play as maybe a starter build, but I would definitely outgrow it very quickly. The detailing is very much the same. I followed very similar patterns that I normally do for these builds. It is something that I need to work on and improve, but it's standard and it is consistent throughout each of the builds. So it is something that I just gravitate towards whenever I want to flick my mind off and just do some mindless building. The details that I added to this build, like the greenery and stuff like that, was done on the same day, but the staging that I did has been done in recent times because this build really deserves a little bit more love that I couldn't give it in the moment. So I decided to spice it up and I decided to try my hand at axiom building. Now, I'm not a stranger to Axiom. I have used it in the past for terraining, but I am still relatively new to a lot of the tools that it provides. So this was a bit of a feel out moment where I just had to go with basic instruments that I knew the layout of confidently enough to do this. And I needed to work in masks, which I really hadn't played around with up until this point. I used an older version of Axiom when I was building any of my mountain ranges and landscaping previously. So with this edition, a lot of the tools had changed. So it was me relearning this and just trying to add in a basic scene to really give this build a second life. You know, it was something that I wasn't very proud of in the moment. And with this terraining, I can comfortably say that I actually like this build. It really has turned a corner with this terraining, and it's really proven to myself that even when I was feeling the absolute lowest, absolutely hating this build, I still managed to turn it into something that I like. I just needed to step away and have a little bit of a break and really focus on myself and how I wanted to approach problems. Now with the terraining done, I can confidently say that this build really had a redemption arc over the past months. It went from something that I genuinely really despised, it was the crux of my failures and all the like, but now it is something that I could see in a world. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed. I'll see you again tomorrow. Bye bye.